Welcome back to Carolina This Week. Joining me now is Robbie Bischoff. He is normally behind the scenes making the cameras move on this show and making everything happen. But this morning we have him on the other side for a very good reason. Robbie is the Wpde director/historian. And before I even started working here, I went to the Wpde history page and found hours and hours of footage and just about everything I needed to know about the station. And Robbie put that together. Why are you so interested in Wpde other than the obvious, you work here?
Well, basically because I grew up watching Wpde long before I started working here. I mean, most people won't believe this, but I was probably the only 7-year-old little kid that watched Wpde 6 p.m. news in the evening. You know, it kind of started with the meteorologist at the time, Tom Sorrells, came and spoke to my 2nd grade class. He went on the air that night and said, hey, you know, Forest Park Elementary School, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And Hurricane Hugo hit shortly after that, and that was just a big part of getting me into weather and all that. So I watched Wpde at a young age, and then Ed Piotrowski went to high school with my sisters back in Texas before we even moved to Myrtle Beach, which turned out to be a huge coincidence. And we kind of got hooked up with him, and my sisters got me in the door as his intern, and he played a huge role in actually getting me here in this seat today.
We are celebrating 30 years of Wpde this year, and you have put together a fantastic half-hour documentary about Wpde over 30 years that's going to air at noon today. Let's take a look at one of the promotional videos you put together for it, and this is about the coverage of Hurricane Hugo.
And as it tore into Charleston at midnight, we were trying to stay on the air.
The eye of the storm is now covering Charleston, South Carolina.
But then at some point, they shut down the power grid. So everyone in Carolina went dark. We'd been through small tropical storms. I'd never been hit by anything that big.
That was Tom Sorrells. He's now a meteorologist. I want to say he's in Tampa, Florida.
Orlando,
Florida.
Big time.
He's been there for years. I had the chance to meet him at an anniversary party we had just for employees and former employees last year. Neat guy, but neat times at Wpde. How did you unearth all this footage? Does it still exist around here somewhere?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Hugo stuff was actually the only stuff that we really had in-house. It's kind of what started my fuel for the anniversary stuff. We had a bunch of old 3/4 tapes in the back that had all the newscasts from Hugo, and I took them home and watched every single one of them back to back for a long time. And that kind of started it all, yeah. So we've had the Hugo stuff. A lot of the other stuff, though, you know, especially the early stuff like 80 to 85, we had nothing from that because it was just, you know, people didn't save things back in, you know, with our station at that time. So I ended up calling and hunting down and tracking down a lot of these former anchor and talent and getting them to send copies of the air checks to me. And they loved it because they wanted copies of it on DVD as well. So that was kind of how we got it.
And while we had this anniversary party and you had so many of those anchors in town like Tom, you sat everybody down and did interviews and talked to them about their time here.
Yes, yes. While we were all doing the party, I was kind of back and forth and had them in there, and kind of my dream come true interviewing everybody. So another
part of the documentary focuses on the Challenger explosion, and of course we have ties to the destruction from Lake City. Let's take a look at the clip that we have of the Challenger.
Thinking of things that were extremely difficult, the Challenger, the space shuttle explosion.
Today, the spotlight falls on Lake City, where the town of Lake City is trying to cope with its own grief at the loss of its hometown hero, astronaut Ron McNair.
I'll never forget coming home that day and literally walking through my door at home, and I walked through the door and I fell on the floor and I just cried and cried and cried.
Jan Pate, she lives in Chicago now, working in a big position with the YMCA National Board. Ron McNair, of course, Lake City's favorite son. Allison Floyd even sung in a memorial service while she was in high school. So
yes, we do have footage of that. Didn't make it in the special, but we do have footage of that.
What was it like as you went through all of this stuff? It had to be hard to track some of it down because we've changed the videotape format so many times to the point we don't even use tape anymore.
My old production manager gave me an old 3/4 deck, which is like one of the very first oldest decks they used in the 80s and you know, stuff like that. And hunting these guys down, and they'd give me the copies and everything, and I'd kind of just rummage through everything and see what I could find. And anything that popped up that was Wpde, my eyes lit up, you know. it was hard, but it was also fun. It was really fun for me. I had a blast doing it and seeing each time I got a new tape, oh, where were we? You know, the biggest quest for me was finding our first year on the air, and that took me 10 years to find that. So,
and people are also going to see in that special Nancy O'Dell, who started off at WPDE.
A reporter.
She didn't go by the name Nancy O'Dell back then.
It was Nancy Humphreys.
Nancy Humphreys. If you ever have a trivia question that pops up about WPDE, this is the guy you need to put on your speed dial. Let's look at one final clip, and this is from the Horry County wildfire, which probably most of us remember from a couple years ago.
And I remember the scanner going on, and I remember hearing a police officer yelling, "The fire's jump 22, it's jump 22, get everybody out now, get them out now." And the hairs on my neck just stood up. The police in North Myrtle Beach did a fabulous job of driving through those neighborhoods and announcing, you know, yelling, "Everyone get out, get out."
Evacuate immediately, Barefoot is on fire.
And that was quite a night, and I'm glad that made it into the special, because I think probably one of the better stories about how a community came together to recover after something like this. When can people watch it?
It'll be actually today at noon, and if you missed today's airing at noon, there'll be another rerun on CW on Monday at 10:30 p.m. following the Carolina and Company 10 o'clock edition, and also Christmas Eve at 3:30 p.m. on WPDE, your third chance to see it.
It's getting a lot of airplay. 30 years and 30 minutes. I had a chance to watch just about the entire special. Fantastic. Really, if you're interested in this area at all and this area's history, the last 30 years really is kind of summed up in this special. I thought you did a tremendous job with it, Robbie. I wouldn't have him on the show otherwise. Stay with us. We'll be right back.